How to optimize your pension as a self-employed person in Belgium. In this session from Money Week 2025, I speak with Karel van den Eynde, Public Affairs Manager at Liantis. He specializes in advising entrepreneurs on optimizing their pension strategies, including government schemes and additional pension options such as the VAPZ PLCI, PLCI CPTI and IPT EIP. We dive deep into these pension products, breaking down the rules and constraints for each of them, comparing them on multiple levels. We also discuss the optimal way to use the pension products, comparing their fiscal advantages, but also discussing their expected returns. And that's because this is something important for me. Most tax and pension specialists in Belgium will advise products based on their fiscal advantages. But I think they're wrong. Instead of looking at the tax deductions, we should compare our options for building our pension based on the expected returns on the total money available at pension net of taxes. Because in the end, what matters is that we optimize how hard our savings are working for us, not how little taxes we're paying. So if you're self-employed and you're wondering how to optimize your pension, then this episode is for you. By the way, my name is Sebastian Aguilar. I am the founder of Fire Belgium, where I help people in Belgium take control of their finances and learn to prepare for their pension through evidence-based passive index investing optimized for Belgian taxes. I explain everything about how you can learn and how you can get started in the free workshop on the Fire Belgium website, firebelgium.com investing workshop. And now let's learn from Karel van den Eynde. Welcome everyone to the fifth talk of Belgium Money Week 2025. Today we speak with Karel van den Eynde about the pension system for the self-employed in Belgium. Karel is a public affairs manager at Liantis. Karel, welcome and thank you for being here today. It's a pleasure having you.
I'm Karel van den Eynde, Public Affairs Manager at Liantis. Liantis is a HR service provider that offers social services for self-employed and for employers. And as for the self-employed, we provide a legal social status of the employed, the self-employed, and we offer also supplementary social insurance for the self-employed. For example, a supplementary pension also.
Yes.
So in this context, we would like to talk with each other about that pension.
Exactly. So that's why we invited you. We're very excited to learn more about the pension system for self-employed. I am myself self-employed, but I know very little about the pension system that applies to me. And here today, you have an audience of mostly self-employed, both people with their own businesses and people who work as freelancers, so as physical persons. And so I think we could start right away by just, if you could, describe the pension system for the self-employed in Belgium, what makes it different maybe from employees and civil servants.
The pension system for the self-employed has a rather short history compared to the pension system of the employees. It only exists since 1956, and it was first formed as a very sober, very little, just a few euros for the dependent, because they were supposed to take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So the first pension system was very, very sober. It was a lump sum when you worked as independent and you paid your contributions. You got a very low sum when you retired.
In fact, I think it's important to clarify this. My understanding is that back then, the self-employed were mostly profession libérale, doctors, lawyers, and those sort of people who didn't want the state to meddle in their personal finances and their own affairs. Yes. So they actually preferred not to have a system and to handle their personal finance themselves. Is that correct?
That's correct, because at first most self-employed were against compulsory pension system, and it is by the work of the social organizations of the independent who saw that there were growing problems. Healthcare was growing more expensive. There were also, when the economy didn't go well, there were really dramas, persons who got broke and they had no pension, so they had no money at all. That's why they wanted to have a protection for the self-employed. But it was a protection like when you go to the OCMW, very small amount, and only when you needed it. It is in the evolution of the years. That was the first system. We had an important change in 1984 because before 1984, it was a lump sum for everyone the same. Since 1984, there was a change. All the years after 1984 gave right to a pension based on your income, on your social contribution. The higher your income, the higher your pension. And a few years ago, there was another important step, because between 1984 and 2021, the pension was calculated in the same manner as for the employees. What did they do? For each year, they saw what was the income of that year. It was indexed to the moment of retirement, okay? But each year, they took the income of that year, and then they made a calculation. They took each year is 1/45 of the pension, because the total career is 45 years. So each year is one part of it. They took the income, they divided it by 45. Then they took, you have a single pension that is 60% of your income. Income that is capped. There is a plafond. And that was the calculation for the employees. But for the self-employed, they said, oh, the self-employed, they pay less contributions than what is paid for the employee. So we have to take that into account. So they multiplied it with 60%. That meant that a self-employed got with the same income as an employee, got 60% of the pension of an employee. And that changed in 2021. For all the years starting from 2021, the calculation is exact the same for self-employed as for employees. And that's a huge step for a better pension for employees. Of course, this new calculation counts for all years starting from 2021. So it will generate high pension, specifically for those who have many years starting from 2021, and it will be at full in 2065. And when you have 45 years, a full career after 2021.
Yes. Okay. So for a long time, it felt probably unfair to lose self-employed then, because the calculation was just worse, simply for the same. Was it for the same level of income, or also for the same level of contribution?
Yeah, they count on the income. Okay. So they take the income on which you pay, on the basis of which you pay your social contributions. That is the starting point for the calculation.
And so in 2021, when they changed the formula, basically increased pensions going forward, does that mean that the self-employed also have to contribute more than to Social Security in terms of contribution?
No, that's the good thing about it, because there is one important difference between the pension system for the employees and for the self-employed. When you see at the pension system for the employees, we see that 1/3 of all pension rights are based on equivalent periods. Equivalent periods are periods of illness or joblessness. During these periods, no social contributions are paid, but you build up your pension rights, just as if you worked. So these equivalent periods count for 1/3 of all pension rights for employees. That's a lot.
That's a big number, yes.
Yes. And so in the budget of the social statute of the self-employed, it's a different budget, only 4% is due to equivalent periods. So that's a lot less. So the budget is healthier for the self-employed. They pay less on social contribution, but almost all the amount of social contributions, the most of it goes to the pensions. So more of the rights are really paid for by the independents. And that's why they could increase, make the pension system better without raising the contributions.
Yeah, so now it makes it more fair in that.
Yes.
Because so it makes it more fair, but then it doesn't help with the Belgian budget deficit and all this, of course, I guess, because what we've done is we've increased spending, we haven't increased the contributions, but I guess it's a different topic. And I guess so. This is all for Pillar 1, right?
Yes.
How would you prefer that we move forward? Do you want to continue speaking about Pillar 1 and like the changes that are maybe more recent, including the announcement from the recent government?
Well, maybe we could discuss at the end the changes of the new government, because there are important changes, but the most important change will be for the civil servants, less for the self-employed. Most changes concern the link between effective work and pension rights. So the more you effectively work and pay contributions, the more pension you will get. And not working will be in sort of punished. Huh?
Yeah.
So we can discuss that perhaps later.
And so this is Pillar 1 and sort of the history, how it's gone. I guess from my understanding is that up to 2020, then the expected pension for self-employed from Pillar 1 was very low. I remember seeing numbers like 800 or 900 euro per month for someone, like for the average pension, and it would be even lower for women.
Yes.
Like
but there you have to take something into account, because the average pension is because it's really average, and not everyone has a complete pension career of 45 years. In the average, there are also comprised people who have only 10 years of profession as a self-employed. So that's all taken into account. Normally, when the minimum pension for a self-employed after a full career of 45 years is about 1,800 euros these days.
Yes.
And that's for a single person.
So 45 years of career as self-employed.
Yeah. When you don't have 45 years, for example, 40 years, you have 45ths of that amount.
Yes. Okay.
But to give an example, when the abolition of the correction coefficient, what I talked about, when that is in full force in 2065, then calculated on this index with this incomes, maximum incomes, will amount to almost 4,000 euros. It's also gross, not net, but they're also subject to taxes and so on. But it's now around 2,000, you can say, but it will grow to 4,000.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, this 60% correction factor removed, that is basically almost doubles the potential pension for full career. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it's a very welcome change for sure. And so this is Pillar 1. Can you tell us a bit about the story of Pillar 2, how it got started for the self-employed and where it's at today, and maybe the evolution, the same way we looked at Pillar 1?
Yes, the first project in Pillar 2 was the VAPZ, PLCI, as we call it in Dutch and French. And that was started in 1982. 2. And that was very interesting. That was 1982. You remember that was the period where the self-employed got a very low sum of pension, very, very low. And they wanted more pension. They felt the need to have more pension. But at that time, there was also an economic crisis. The Belgian state didn't have the money to raise the pensions for the self-employed, and the self-employed, of course, they didn't want to pay more contributions. So they said, we will not raise the statutory pension system, but we will give the self-employed the opportunity, the possibility to contribute on a voluntary basis for an extra pension. And that was the VAPZ. The concept was that this VAPZ should make it possible for the self-employed, if he wanted it, to reach the level of the pension of the employees. And that's why many people say VAPZ is not pillar 2, it is pillar 1 bis, because it is the pendant of the pension of the employees. It fills the gap between the low pension of the self-employed and the statutory pension of the employee. So it was created in 1982. It has a long history, and at the moment it is basically the first thing a self-employed should do, in my opinion, to have a better social security, to raise the statutory pension. Do that before you have other projects of the second pillar, because in my view, I really consider the VAPZ as part of the first pillar. The second pillar is then there are other projects. They came later in history. For persons who are directors of a company, they have the IPT, EID, individual pension.
I will share my screen
Yes.
because I have this slide that I've used before and you've seen in the intro. So this slide. So here we can see, so the government pension, in fact, I prepared the screen quite well. Here we see VAPZ and PLCI as, almost pillar 1 bis, because it gives the same level as the government pension for employees. So it wasn't meant to be like this, but it does appear like that. And then, so you're saying that those 3 other options came later, right?
Yes, of course. And then when you are a director of a company, then you can take IPT, EIP, or you can take part in the group insurance that exists already in your company. Perhaps you have that also for your employees. That's in a company. When you don't have a company, when you work as sole trader, you don't have that possibility. And since a few years, there is the possibility for them also to have a CPTI, that is supplementary pension of the second pillar, that is created for sole traders, because it's a little bit equivalent to VAPZ. So you go to an insurance company and you have a contract for a supplementary pension, but the rules are quite different. Also, the taxation rules for PLZ and IPT are quite similar and are different from the VAPZ. Because what's important for the VAPZ is that your contributions are considered the same way as the social contributions you pay to your social security fund. That's why it's also a business cost, and it gives not only a fiscal deduction, but also a deduction of your social contributions you pay on that income.
Okay. I guess so. I think now is a good time to then dive a bit deeper into VAPZ and the way it works. I think you mentioned you had some slides. Do you want to share something?
Yes. This are the differences between the different projects. So VAPZ is first pillar BIS. You can take that when you are self-employed, and here it doesn't matter whether you are a director of a company or a sole trader. For every independent, it is applicable. So the contributions are considered as a professional cost, same way as your social contributions. But there is a maximum here. You can contribute maximum 8.70% of your income, with a maximum of 4,000 euro per year. And there is also, next to the ordinary VAPZ, there is a social VAPZ where you can contribute 15% more. The difference is that in the social VAPZ, 10% of the contributions is spent for a solidarity fund, for example, a rent, or just can premievrijstelling. This means that when you are ill, for example, the solidarity fund will take over and will pay, as long as you are sick, the contributions for your VAPZ. So you don't have to pay for yourself, and you have the guarantee that the buildup of your supplementary pension is not stopped when you cannot work any longer. That's quite an advantage, I suppose. The benefits, when you go on pension and you get your capital that you have built up, then they will see what is the capital that you have, and they take a notional interest. It is the capital without the profit gain is taken into account, and then they take, when you are at pension age, they take 5%. This 5% you have to add to your taxes during 10 years, for example, and it will be taxed. It comes up above your income. Tax administration will calculate your tax and take into account that notional interest for 10 years. When you take your pension before retirement age, then there is another percentage at 60 years. For example, it's 3.5% of the capital without the profits. The POZ is second pillar. That is specifically for the self-employed outside the company. There you have different tax rules. You have a tax reduction of 30%. It's without a maximum, but you have to take into account the 80% rule. The 80% rule means that they will look at your statutory pension. Then they will see how much is your capital that you have saved during your supplementary pension. They convert it to annuity, monthly annuity. They make the sum of your statutory pension per month and the annuity per month. Then they compare it to your last income, and the sum of your statutory pension and your supplementary pension cannot be higher than 80% of your last income. When it is higher, then the part above that you constitute above the 80% is not tax deductible.
Okay, and so in this 80% rule, this is the sum of pillar 1, VAPZ, and then any of the second pillar.
Yeah. For the VAPZ, they don't take the 80% rule into account.
No, so this one is uncapped. No, it's capped in a different way.
Yes.
So we have pillar 1, and then we add VAPZ, and then we can add up to until we get to 80% of the we have the tax deduction. And if we want, we can go further, but without the tax advantage.
That's correct. And that's before, for instance, the fourth pillar can do its job to go above the 80%. The same 80% rule is also in play for the IPT. IPT is meant for company directors. It is paid by the company. That's why it's a deductible expense for the company, not for you as a self-employed. But also here, you can pay your premiums till you reach the 80%, not above the 80%. And the benefits are quite the same. You receive a capital, and that capital is taxed on the basis of 10% when you effectively work till retirement age. When you take early retirement, then you pay 60.5% on your capital.
So that's if we decide to take the money out before retirement.
Yeah. Also for PLCI and IPT, they also have a contribution for the sick administration, RISIF in AMI, and a solidarity taxation of 0 till 2%, but from a certain amount, it is always 2%.
And this
So,
comes on top of the 10%?
yeah, they first take the contribution for RISIF and solidarity, then they see, okay, what's left, and then they take the 16.5 or 10%.
Okay. So, and this is based on the contributions, but not on the profits.
Yes.
So they sum the contributions, and then they take then those receive and solidarity percentage out of the contributions.
Yeah.
Or
they take RISIF and solidarity. They take into account your statutory pension and your supplementary pension, conversed in an annuity.
yes.
When it's over a certain amount, you have 2% solidarity contribution, and it is the pension administration who collects the money. Also for the RISIF contribution, it's 3.55%. They collected via the pension system. And otherwise, the 10 or 16.5% is collected by, is taken and paid to the government by the insurance company.
Okay. I think I understand quite well the side of contribution and premiums, but I'm still unsure about how the benefits work. So for VAPZ, when we want to sign up for this, we go where? We go to.
You can go to you can go to your social security fund, for example, because they have also a role to play here. Or you can go to your bank, to your insurance company, to your broker. So it's a free market. Huh?
Okay. And there, the options within VAPZ would be things like insurance or pension funds? Is this like, are we talking about investing in the stock market through?
No, most of the VAPZ is
Insurance.
21,
21.
and so they don't invest in stock markets. They invest very conservatively in
Bonds.
government bonds, for instance. So usually they have a guaranteed interest. The result doesn't depend on the evolution on the stock market.
Right, and I think this where the legal minimum there's a legal minimum interest, which was 1.25 until recently, and now it's 2.5%. Is that right?
That's for the group insurance. For the VAPZ, it's not applicable. Okay. There is a competition between companies, so they decide for themselves how high the interest rates are. But there is a lot of competition, so they manage to keep it at a certain level.
So if I want to subscribe to VAPZ, I can go to one of those providers. They will probably offer several branch 21 products, which will be invested in bonds. And those bonds, there will be government bonds, probably Belgian bonds and European government bonds. But they don't have a minimum guaranteed returns. It's just that I will get the interest from the bonds, right?
Yes, they have, the interest is guaranteed by the insurance company.
Okay, so there is a guarantee in the product, And then the money is invested in bonds. And so the insurance or the company takes part of the risk in terms of the minimum.
Yeah. They invest the insurance companies, they invest very conservatively because they have to guarantee a certain result.
Okay. Do you know if within VAPZ there's options to select TAC 23 or branch 23 instead, or is it just 21?
In the field, it is almost 100% branch 21.
Okay. And so if we were looking at basically how the contributions are growing over time. So if I contribute 4,000 euros each year, right? Let's say after 10 years, that's 40,000 euros, and it's invested in branch 21, which normally has a fairly low ongoing management costs, but the returns also inside are fairly small, right? So
Yes.
I guess when we do this, we put money into bonds. They do accrue interest over time. And say if I reach 65, and let's imagine I just worked as a self-employed for 10 years, from 55 to 65, and I get to my pension age at 65, and I have 40,000 euros of contributions, right? And then it would say, okay, it was 1 or 2% a year of interest. So this 40,000 has grown to, let's say, 45,000 over 10 years. I guess that's possible. And then how does this notional interest apply? And how is what do I get as someone who retires at 65 with this VAPZ of 40,000 something?
Well, the result is the product of two things. It is the interest that is playing, and also you get a profit sharing from the company. The profit sharing is not taxable, so that's for free. They take the amount of money you build up with the guaranteed interest. Say that's so much, and then they take the percentage. For instance, if you have a result of 100,000, I just say that to be able to calculate on a simple way. Then if I am at this moment 66, the legal retirement age, I take my VAPZ, I have 100,000. So I have to take 5,000, 5% of 100,000 in my tax application. So I have my pension, and above my pension, I have to declare 5,000 euro extra above my pension to the tax administration, and then they will calculate my tax.
So we assume we have 5,000 income on that year. It's just on the year that we retire?
It's the year that we retire and the following 9 years, because you have to declare it during 10 years.
Okay, so we declare
10 years, 5,000 euro above your pension.
Okay, so it's like we have the pillar 1 pension, that is the main thing we get, and then we add 5,000 on top because of the VAPZ that we received as a lump sum. So when we get the VAPZ out, we get 100,000 euro lump sum. And then in the tax declaration, we don't put 100,000 at 66, we put 5,000 and then 5,000 for 10 years.
Yes.
Okay. And then the calculation of taxes of each year then is including 5,000 on top of the other pension. Okay, so that's interesting.
That's interesting when the pension is low. When the pension is high and you have to pay taxes, of course, it's above your pension, you have to pay taxes on.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously. So yeah, because it will fall into the progressive pension tax rates, or just the progressive tax rate of income. Yes, and that makes sense.
But the system is very logical. I said earlier, it is not second pillar, it is first pillar bis. So in first pillar, the investments are rather conservative. People want to be sure that they can count on a certain amount of money. So they invest in a conservative way. Also, what you see here concerning the taxation is that the taxation is very similar on the statutory pension. It's just somewhat extra above your statutory pension, and it is seen by the tax administration just the same way.
Yeah. And it's not even on the entire amount, it's on 50% of it over
Yeah.
5% times 10. Okay, so it's basically a tool to put money aside that is counted as a cost, professional cost. So basically we pay lower taxes on this during accumulation, and then we don't pay full tax on it when we withdraw because it's only part of it is basically added to the tax declaration basis. So there's a tax incentive both ways. Well, of certainly during contribution and then later on as well. I guess the drawback is that there's limited growth, but it's because it's super safe, right? It's extremely safe. Those branch 21, these are products that are like how is a branch 21? How does it work? Do you know a bit more? Could you explain how that works in practice?
Branch 21 is a branch where you invest money, and the insurance company invests it also, but they want to be sure that they have no losses. So they invest in a very conservative way, and there's always the bonds of the government that are sure. They invest also a little bit in shares, company shares also. So they make a mixture, but they want to make sure that the result is guaranteed. So they don't take any risks because they are sure they have to guarantee a certain result to the beneficiaries.
Okay, no, I think that's very
and that's different from branch 23, because in branch 23 they have the opportunity to see on the long term, to invest in shares, and to have a little bit more risk, because they don't have to guarantee a certain result. And that's in my eyes the difference between branch 21 and 23.
Yes, indeed. And so for POZ and IPT, what would be like? Would it be similar to VAPZ in that sense? Like it's also mostly insurance companies selling branch 21, or do you see other things there?
There you have also 23.
Okay.
And so you can choose. But the difference is VAPZ is fiscally interesting, but the contribution is very limited.
Yeah.
People who want to do more, so they have to see further. They have to take the second pillar into account, and then if you are a company director, then you go to the EPT. If you have no company, you can take a POZ. And difference is, in the first place, the EPT, the company pays it. If you have no company, you pay it yourself. And there is less limitation. The only limitation there is the 80% rule.
Okay. And then there's a tax deduction for POZ when you pay it on your own. And the premium tax is something that we pay on the contributions.
Yes. When you pay a contribution, 4% goes to the tax administration.
Okay, and we get a tax reduction of 30%. So it feels like they're working in opposite direction, those two, no?
I didn't understand that question.
The tax reduction of 30%, this is also on the premium, on the contribution?
Yes, of course. It's on the contribution.
So if I'm
declare it.
If I'm contributing 1,000 euros in a POZ for a specific year, how those two taxes are calculated and what happens?
There's 300 euro. Then if you spend 1,000 euro, you have a tax reduction of 300 euro.
Okay.
after declaration at the tax administration, of course.
And the 4.4 premium tax?
The 4.5 premium tax is you pay €1,000 and 44 euro is taken, it's collected by the insurance company. That's for themselves.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's taken and they give it to the government, of course. Yes.
Okay. And then,
but the premium tax, and this is perhaps interesting, the new federal government has decided to abolish this premium tax because they want to harmonize the different projects of the second pillar. So that is going to change. Only texts, legal texts are being prepared now. They will be presented in Parliament after the vacation, end of April, beginning of May. So most fiscal changes will take place the 1st of July this year, and they will go into working, from this year or at least next year.
Okay, and in terms of benefits for PLCI and IPT, it's also a lump sum payment. So let's imagine I accumulated 100,000 just for the calculation. At that point, if I then work until retirement age, it's a 10%. No, first there's the receive and solidarity that gets deducted depending on the amount. And then on the remainder, the 10% tax is on the entirety of everything that was accumulated, or just on the contributions? I'm not sure how this applies.
On the entirety of what is accumulated.
Okay.
And it is the insurance company that withholds the 10 or 16.5% and which is to the state.
Okay. In your experience, what size, like what level of reserve or contribution or lump sum do people get when they reach retirement? Are we talking about 100,000, or is it more like 10,000, or what's the scale of this?
Well, there are statistics every 2 years. The FSMA, government, makes statistics on supplementary pensions. What we see is that the supplementary pensions of the employees are rather moderate. For self-employed, who have more obliged to have a supplementary pension, the amounts are higher, but there is a large difference. We see that by company directors have the highest supplementary pensions, sole traders have less. But for example, the VAPZ, on average, it's about 80,000. So that's not much. But what we see is that young people who start as a self-employed are more interested in investing for a supplementary pension as from the start on, and they don't wait very long to begin saving. So that's important. The longer the period of your saving, the higher the amount of your supplementary pension. That's simple.
Yes. And I'm guessing then the driver for people to put money in those plans is mostly the tax advantage.
Yes.
So the advice of their accountant saying, hey, you can get tax benefits if you do this, this, and that. And so that's probably how people do that. And then people receive this as a lump sum. Do you know how people manage this in retirement?
Well, we have to say it is paid as a lump sum, but in second pillar, people have the right to ask for a payment in annuities, but they don't do it because the tax is not profitable. So they have an extra income, and they have, you could say, they have to pay twice because on the annuities they have to pay taxes also. So most people take this as a lump sum, and a lot of people, they take investments of their own. Some people invested in real estate. Other people invested in perhaps the company of one of the children. They do something without it with it.
Okay, so it could also be bank funds or something else.
Yes.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
And then we have the third pillar, which I'm a bit more familiar with because it's applicable to everyone. But
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit about the third pillar? Like, first of all, maybe why it exists and why it's like it's just one more layer.
Yes, it's a very simple project that's applicable for all citizens here in Belgium. So it's quite simple. It's a maximum amount you can save from your youth, as you can say, to your pension. And it's simple. You have a tax deduction of 30%. Since a few years, we have a double system. When you save till an amount of €1,000, the tax deduction is 30%. When you want to save a higher amount till €13,350, you can pay more, but the tax deduction is only 25%. So that's only interesting when you spend the whole amount. And that's interesting. It's simple. You can choose for an insurance company or a pension fund, depending, branch 21, branch 22, depending on what are the risks you want to take, and it is taxed at 60 years. So the tax company, the insurance company, they collect the money, they invest, they build up the supplementary pension or the pension saving, and at the age of 60 years, they have to pay 8% of the sum to the state. But that's interesting because between 60 years and your retirement, you can make savings, have tax deductions, and that amount you build during these years is not taxable. So basically, this is quite simple. Now the new government is also planning to change this. They don't want anymore the dual system. They want a simple system with one amount and one tax deduction. So they want to simplify that. We don't know. And some people think that it will be a lower amount because the government want to save, to make some savings. This costs for the state because the tax deduction this means less taxes for the government.
Yeah, tax deduction is basically them giving money to support people doing this, and it's a subsidy for the industry which is offering the products, in fact, in a way. So Karel, when people who are like coming to you as self-employed, maybe there's one sole trader, maybe there's a company director, and they come to you and they don't have any of these plans in place. How do you help them think about this and get started?
Well, perhaps we can say this. We always recommend that people first make full use of the VAPZ. This project has, as I said, the advantage that the contributions are treated in the same way for tax purposes as the statutory social security contributions that people pay to their social insurance funds. It is a professional expense. So as a result of that, you don't only achieve a tax benefit, but you also save on your social security contributions because you reduce the income in which those social contributions are calculated. The disadvantage is perhaps that the contributions for the VAPZ are limited. I said currently the maximum contribution is approximately €4,000 per year. So this is the first step. And then if there is still some extra room to do more, people can also invest in a second pillar pension. And then you have to choose. You have a company, then you take IPT. You don't have a company, you take PLCI. There is no limitation for except then the 80% rule. And of course, third place, this is you can have the pension saving. This we discussed just now, perhaps, and that's rather new. You know, since the abolition of the correction factor in the pension calculations for the self-employed, the pension will, in a period of time, grow higher. And what this means, with a higher pension, you have little less room for a supplementary pension, because you have the 80% rule means that the sum of your statutory pension and your supplementary pension cannot be higher than 80% of your last income. So people will search for other possibilities, and then I guess the fourth pillar becomes more important. And in the future, I guess we will, at this time, we take this scheme when we give advice to people. But I guess in the future, it will be more important to also speak about the fourth pillar and to stimulate people as early as possible to have savings, to take shares, to invest, perhaps also in real estate, because it's proven that real estate keeps its value over time. And I guess this will be for a lot of self-employed who have enough room to invest in a supplementary pension in a higher income once in retirement, that this becomes more important.
Mm-hmm. The order in which these pension products are recommended, I see that it's mostly driven by the tax optimization at the time of contribution, or maybe overall, to sort of gradually fill in the bucket, right? We first use VAPZ because we have a limitation of 4,000 a year, and because we have a very interesting tax regime on those contributions. And then we go to IPT because there's also an IPT and POZ because there's another interesting tax regime for them. So it's mostly driven by that. I was wondering if anyone has looked at a similar recommendation order, or maybe a different order, but based on the benefit that is acquired at the end by the person who retires. So my sense is that VAPZ is mostly branch 21, which would be then bonds, extremely safe, very little compound interest, very little growth over potentially long periods of time. Whereas something like the pension savings or IPT POZ could be in branch 23, which might grow at 1, 2, 3% more per year. So I was wondering if this calculation had been made in terms of which of these brings the highest benefit for the same level of contribution, given all the taxes and given potentially different growth percentages, different interest rates over time. Is this something that has been looked at? I'm guessing yes, but
when self-employed ask advice to us, they are primarily interested in tax deduction. That's true. Because that's also the advice of the accountants in most of the cases. They want immediate result, and the immediate result is tax deduction. But it is correct if you only see to if you only take result into account, you can start with an IPT also, because there you have the possibility, branch 21, if you start early at an early age, over a longer period of time, branch 21, investing in shares will give more result at the end. So this is possible. You don't have to do this order. You don't have to start with VAPZ. You can also start with POZ or IPT, and perhaps later take a VAPZ. That's what you want. This is not an obligation to start with a VAPZ. But in our experience, people are primarily interested in fiscal aspects.
It's interesting because in the end, what people want is a good pension, and well, the thing is, me as obviously,
Yeah.
as you know, I am part of a community of people who look at
Yeah.
investment returns, right? We learn to invest mostly
Mm-hmm.
for, and also now we're looking at our pension and we're thinking, okay, how do I make my pension basically the most efficient for me to have
Mm-hmm.
the highest pension? So we come at this from a different perspective, saying, well, if I am going to put money in pension products, I want to first put money in the one that's going to give me the best pension,
Yeah.
irrespective of what happens in between. The goal is, if I put 1,000 today and I do that for every year for 40 years, I want this to give me the highest pension payment at 66.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, so to me, this seems completely logical because that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in fact, I'm surprised people don't look at it this way, because in the end, that's what, like, we're buying something, we're buying future income, and we're
Mm-hmm.
not buying tax deductions right. Oh, or maybe what should then take place is that we include the tax deductions in the initial calculation of the contribution. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like we are contributing 4,000 euros in the VAPZ.
Yes.
It should be the net difference in salary or in income
Mm-hmm.
that this 4,000 contribution leads to, right?
Yes.
And using
Yeah.
that number as, this is how much we're actually investing in future income,
Mm-hmm.
and then do this for each of the pension products and
Yes.
basically look at what's the difference in net income today that I'm giving away or that I'm investing, and what does
Mm-hmm.
lead in terms of benefit in theoretical 40 years or something, given a certain potential rate of return, because again, those things can change over time, right? The
Yes.
interest rates will change over time. Branch 23 can do 2% per year, can do 5% per year. We don't
Yeah.
know. Can
Mm-hmm.
be negative for some time too.
Yeah.
So given certain assumptions, then what would, yeah. So I guess that's how we should look at it. I guess I'm speaking to the audience here, people who are listening to this and watching this, as a group of self-employed people interested in how effectively our money is working. I think this is how we should look at it. And so
Mm-hmm.
if someone is in the audience and is interested in looking at this and wants to do some simple math in a spreadsheet with me, I'm be very interested in developing this sort of calculation model, just to get a sense of like the impact of each of those tax deductions,
Mm-hmm.
then investment into different types of pension products with their own costs and their own expected returns,
Mm-hmm.
and then getting a sense of what amount of net income, say, and then we could try to get a sense of, like, for a 1,000 euro net income given up then as a self-employed on a certain specific year, what that would lead to in terms of benefit at 67 for each of those pensions, and then see how that plays out, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we end up to something similar, in fact, but we don't know. And maybe we end up to a different order. And in fact, we would probably include Pillar 4 there, because obviously with Pillar 4, well, there's no restriction, that's one,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no tax benefit. So it's
Yeah.
like, how does this play out? I guess that would be quite interesting to do. And Karel, if you're interested, I'm happy to do this with you and Liantis as well, in terms of trying to figure this out and basically having a different perspective to this,
Mm-hmm. Yes, it could be interesting.
which would be investment
Yeah.
efficiency, right? How
Yeah.
much of my net income, and how does this translate into, net
Mm-hmm.
income in the future, basically?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the most effective way of doing it? Anyway,
Okay. Yeah.
this is just an idea, and we can discuss in the future. This is very interesting. Karel, I was wondering, is there more that you want to share on the pension system and products for the self-employed?
Maybe the question was also, what is the new government planning to
Yes.
do? I don't know if you're interested in that. I had prepared a few slides.
Okay, let's do that. Yes.
Yeah.
Be really interesting.
So before, the previous government has also had a small pension reform. They tightened the access to the minimum pension. Not only you don't only need 2/3 of a career, 30 years of the 45, this means, but they also added the condition that self-employed had 64 quarters, that is 16 full years of effective professional activity. So there was already an inclination towards a stronger link between working and pension rights. And they introduced also a new pension bonus for periods of work when you can go to earlier retirement, but you don't do that and you continue working after that period, you can build pension bonus for each a quarter that you work after your right to early retirement, and it's payable for the pensions from this year. But I have to say, when we see the measures of the new government, that this pension bonus is only working since beginning of this year, will be abolished again. So it will last for only one year. Huh?
Okay.
And there is also a transparency law that was very important, because by this transparency law, the insurance companies need to give more information to the person who is interested in a supplementary pension. But this is for the former government. The new government has a much larger pension reform, and they base on a certain principle. But most important is that link between work and pension. And they want to also to make work of a harmonization of pension systems. So now you have different products, different conditions, different tax regulations. So they want to put all this together and see if there can be more harmonization to make it more simpler for the people. Another important principle is that it will be a gradual implementation. So there will be a lot of measures that are put together now, but people who are not far from their pension won't feel it, because there will be a transitionary period for the new pension reform. Yeah. What's really important timing is that these days the texts of the law, draft law, are written and they are discussed. Next week there will be meetings between the cabinets of different ministers to discuss the text. The text will also be given to a lot of advisory organs. In the social statute of the independent, it is the Algemeen Beheerscomité, Comité Général de Gestion of the Social Statute, in which the organizations of the independent workers are represented. So we get this text because I'm also a representative of Unizo, because Liantis is connected with Unizo. So we see the texts in a few days, and we are asked to give advice about this measures. And then we see that there are certain, I will not take long, I will just give some explanation.
Yes.
So there will be a new pension bonus. The actual pension bonus is a lump sum. When you work longer than the date of early retirement, you get a lump sum per year that you work longer. That's the idea, but it will be abolished, and there will be a new system in place from next year when you work longer. And this is different from the actual pension bonus. The actual pension bonus, you build it after the date of the right to early retirement. If you work longer, you get a pension bonus. The new pension bonus will only be for those who want to work longer than their statutory pension age, their real statutory retirement age. So less people will have a bonus, because it's not so many people that don't take their pension at their retirement age and work longer to build a bigger pension. They can do that, but not many people do that. If they do, they get, as of 26, 2% extra pension per year they work longer. And these percentages will grow over time. Next to that bonus, there will also be a malus, and malus is reduction of your pension when you retire before your retirement age or before you reach a full career of 45 years. Then you will be punished with the same percentage. They calculate your pension, and per year that you go earlier on pension, you lose 2% of your pension as of 2026, and these percentages grow also over time.
Yeah, this 5% is a lot, right?
Is a
From
lot.
2040.
Yes, but you have to take into account this 5%. It has been the case till the years 1990.
Right.
This was the case for everyone, and there was a malus. The pension age was 65, and per year early retirement at 60 years, it's 5 years earlier than the pension age, your pension was diminished structurally for the rest of your life with 25%.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is the restoration of something that existed already before.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah, but that was before you
Yes.
were born, perhaps. So other principle was the link to from work to pension, and this means that the equivalent period, I already said, for the employees, 1/3 of the pension rights is formed by equivalent rights. Years that you don't work, but you are ill, you get an allowance, or you are jobless and you get an allowance. You build up your pension rights without paying contributions. These are equivalent periods. They account for 1/3 of the pension rights of the employees, only 4% of the pension rights of the independent workers. So these will be limited from 27 for periods that constitute over 40% of the career. All that's over 40% will not give right to pension. And this percentage will drop down to 20% in 2031. There are some exceptions, you see that.
Yes, for illness and...
Yeah. Long careers. This was a compromise between the right-wing parties and the left-wing party in the coalition, because socialists for a long time want the right to pension at 60 after a career of 42 years. And now they will introduce that, but very tight conditions. You have to have 42 careers with 234 actual working days. This means 75% of full-time employment. And for self-employed, it is 3/4 of a year, because a year of work is 312 days. In a quarter is 1/4 of a year is 78 days. 3/4 is 234 days. So it's a solution for people who began to work very early, 14, 15 years, have worked hard in their career, and they will be able to stop at 60 years and have their pension.
Yeah, I think
pension.
This seems fair for blue-collar workers that have been working in very tough conditions for a long time. And I think from the conversation I had with Anne Verlinden, from the CEO of Pension Plus, it seems to make sense, because it's also the people who have worked so much more, and then they have, in fact, a slightly lower life expectancy at retirement. And so starting retirement earlier makes sense, because they start working much earlier.
Yeah.
So I think it's fair, in fact, to be able to have this flexibility.
It's a sort of compensation, because the previous governments have talked special regulations for professions that are very heavy, very difficult, but they don't manage to find a solution that's okay for everyone. So they drop this discussion, and this will come in place, because this replaces special regulations for hard conditions in certain professions. And then allowed activity. This means when you are on retirement, you can continue working. And when you work, you have to pay contributions, etc. And the income that you earn is also taxable, of course. But in Belgium, for the pension system, there's a peculiarity that is when you are retired, you have a pension. This is a replacement income. When you have replacement income, you have a good tax regulation because you have a tax deduction. But the amount of the tax deduction diminishes as you earn other incomes. So this means that when you have an income besides your pension, this is relatively high taxated. This you pay high taxes on it, and they want to change it. They want to stimulate people also after retirement to be active, and that's why they say, okay, it's liberating withholding tax of just 33%, so you don't have to pay more than 50% on what you earn while retired. In earlier texts during the government negotiations, there was in some texts 20%, but at the end they have made it higher to 33%. Then the minimum pension will be based on the performance in 3 systems combined. That is because we have 3 pension systems: employees, self-employed, civil servants, different calculations. And for the minimum pension for the self-employed and for the employees, the period of civil servant were not taken into account. So that was a kind of discrimination, and they want to end it. Other thing is the family dimension. They want to abolish the survivors pension. This will be, and replace it by the transitional allowance. Transitional allowance difference is that you get an allowance, but you don't have to limit your earnings. You can have an income, you can work, and without limitation, but it is limited in time. Maximum 1 year, perhaps when you have children, and depending on their age, the age of the children, 2-3 years. So, but that it is a maximum, then it stops. There is a transitional period now for people who have the survivor's pension, and there is a phasing out period. We don't know yet how long it will be, where people can choose between the 2 systems. Because what we saw was that the survivor pension stimulated people to stay, to keep their allowance and stop working. So what the government will want to realize is people also, when they lose their partner, are stimulated to be active in work. And then early retirement, this will be tightened, stronger conditions from 2027 in all systems, only for the counting of the 2/3 of the career, only 2 quarters or 156 days will be counted. So you have to work half time at least to have these years counted for entrance to the minimum pension. And they announce a study, but when they say a study, this isn't sure. They want to see if this is possible, because there is also quite a few years discussion about the introduction of a part-time pension. So this gives people the opportunity to, for example, take a half of a pension when they are, for example, 62 years, and they can combine it with work, half-time work, and when they get 65 or 66, they get a full pension, and the years of the half-time pension will give a supplementary pension, but only 50% of a normal pension because they have also worked. That is the idea, but it is not so simple to implement it. There have been also some advices. That's why they say we will study it. Some people ask for it, but we don't know yet how to do this. So we'll study it and we will see what comes out.
Okay.
And for the supplementary pension, and this is the last slide, for the VAPZ, this is positive news. Now the maximum contribution 8.70% of your income. This will increase to 8.50% starting from next year. And for the social VAPZ, this will go in the same order. According to our calculations, it will be around 9.77%, almost 10% of the incomes. The other two things are less important. For the PLZ, there will be an abolition of the premium tax. That's very important. And they will reform the 80% rule. That's why also very important, because nowadays it is very complex and even accountants have trouble with calculating the 80% rule, and that has consequences. For example, when people pay too high contribution, then a part of it is not tax deductible, and that creates problems. So they want to give the people more security that when they pay their contributions regarding the legislation and respect to legislation, they can be sure that the paid contributions are also tax deductible. That is the purpose of this measure. But also here, this will be studied. There has been studies the past years about reform of the 80% rule. Nothing has come to an end, but now it's I guess more serious. They want really to have a reform thereon, and it will also the product simplification and harmonization of the different supplementary pension systems. Voilà. And perhaps important is also people who do their best to create a supplementary, to form a supplementary pension and have at the end a high capital, they will have an extra taxation above the capital. All that's above the 150,000 euro will be extra eligible for a tax, an extra solidarity contribution. Following the tax that are circulating now, that will be an extra contribution of 2% on all the capital above 150,000.
Okay, so it's
above what is now already existing.
So that okay, so it adds up a little bit, but
yeah.
Okay, well that's a lot of new upcoming updates to the system, and I think the harmonization is something that's very welcome, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
All right, amazing.
Even for experts, it's sometimes difficult to have things clear. Huh?
Yes. Do you know if they're doing anything on the cost structure of the products that are inside?
Yes, and that's a consequence of the transparency law of December 2022. The insurance companies have the obligation to present before signing the contract, to present small paper with all the most important elements of the contract. And this includes also the costs. The costs on the contribution, also the cost, because perhaps there are costs on the amount of money that is accumulated. So this will be transparent from 2027. So they have to be very transparent, and before signing the contract, say to the people what are the costs, and this paper will have the same form. They will have the same template for each insurance company, so people can evaluate and compare the products of different companies. And I believe that more transparency will create also greater competition and will lead at the end to lower costs. Lower costs will also benefit the final result of your savings.
Yes, indeed, indeed, and that's what we are all about in the community.
Yeah.
Optimizing for the benefits at the end.
Yeah.
Karel, this has been really, really interesting. I have learned a lot and I have done out the audience as well. I would like to see if the audience has any questions for Karel, if there's any self-employed who are here and who want to ask him question. Now is a good time. You can post it in the chat or you can turn on your microphone and join us in the call directly. I'm just gonna see if there's something in the chat that we could check right away. So here's someone who's asking a question. I'll read it to you, Karel. Could you start the pension saving at the age of 59 years and 11 months and just take the last 5 years tax-free? Does that make sense, Karel?
Yes, this is just about the pension saving third pillar, I guess. So the state takes the taxation at age 60.
Yes.
When you are over the age of 60, you can continue to have savings and have tax deduction, but what you build with that savings is not taxable anymore. So it will not be subject to tax anymore. You don't have to pay taxes on it.
So he's wondering if it's smart then to start just before 60 years.
No, because there are also one condition. You have to start before you're 55, so you have still 10 years to go. You cannot start, because when you start at age 59, then you are obliged to keep your contract 10 years longer, till you're almost 70 years old, before you get the money.
Yes. So either you start at 55 or before
Yes.
55, or you have to do it for the following 10 years.
Yes. Yeah.
Then, so if you start at 59 and then you say, okay, I will do it for 10 years, then you would get that pension mostly for tax-free, basically. You don't, the 8% would apply only on 1 month, and then you continue for 9 years and 11 months after that.
Technically, I guess it will be there, but I haven't experienced a situation like that. I haven't met anyone who did that.
Yes, this is what happens in this community. People are always trying to find
Yes.
the optimal point to get in and benefit from the system. And obviously there are some guardrails, but they're still looking for the optimal point. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Someone is asking if you're still some way off from retirement, is it a good strategy to just stop pension savings and just restart just before 55? So this is someone who's already investing in index funds, I believe. Dennis?
Yes. Yeah, I guess this depends on your own preferences. We have talked about supplementary pensions. They are a possibility to create an extra income once you are retired, but it's no obligation to do that. It's interesting because you have also some tax deduction that makes it interesting and makes the result higher, because you save money, but you get also money back from the tax administration. So that's interesting. When you pay 100 euros, that gives a tax reduction of 30 euros. You pay only 70 euros, and the 100 euros will be invested and give a result at the end. So, okay, that's, in my eyes, this is interesting. But if you invest in stocks, when you have crazy results that are much higher than what you can earn with your supplementary pension, that's okay. That's also an income. You don't have the tax reduction, but you have higher results. So I guess this is depending on the strategy of each individual,
Mm-hmm.
and depending also on the risk appetite
Mm-hmm.
of each individual.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe I can elaborate if it's possible.
Yeah.
On this. So, given in an investment strategy, if you're, because I did some research on this, if you're already investing for quite some year, the costs that the bank charges you is cumulative on the total number of investments. And once you've invested a bit, the 300 euro you get as a tax refund is less than the annual cost of the investment. So then, in my opinion, it's worth what I did personally. For me, this is not advice, but it's just something I did. It's worth stopping pension saving and rather invest that money into, let's say, an index fund, which has typically higher returns. And then because of the tax breaks, you start again 10 years before you retire. I apply this for me personally, but I don't know what your opinion on that is.
Yes, I guess you can do that. If that's okay for you, that's a perfect strategy. I guess what we see is that a lot of people have no great risk appetite, and they want to be sure about a minimum on a supplementary pension, and that's why they take these projects. But
obviously, indeed, that's a personal risk you have to take, and you have to be willing to accept.
Voilà. We also see people that are not a lot, but some invest quite a lot in real estate, and that is they speculate on the growing value of that real estate and get a lot of money out of it. They rent it. They also have this rent. This is also supplementary money, and perhaps when you have enough income from your real estate, you have less need for supplementary pension.
Good insight.
Yeah.
Can I elaborate on the aspect of the safety and the people who are investing in these products have, are choosing these products because they have less risk appetite. But with the changing legislations we see, I do not know how safe it is, because you invest in an IPT or a VAPZ for 40, 45 years. And on cours de route, a lot of the legislation is changing, because there was already a 10% tax at the end of the contract. There is already a solidarity contribution of 2% if your amount is more than what it is, 14,000 euros, but that's practically peanuts when you're saving for more than 40 years. And now, as I've understood it correctly out of your information, they're going to add another solidarity contribution for amounts over 150,000 euros. So that, in combination with the limited gains you get for these products, and the combination with the raising taxes because of the changing legislations, there is more risk than BTI, because you're looking at a time span of 40, 50 years.
Yes. What you say is very important, because when you save for a supplementary pension, that's an investment on the long term. And people do that when they have confidence that what they do under certain circumstances and under certain conditions will have result in the end, and result that they expect. When legislation changes from time to time, they don't have trust anymore, and trust is very important in these matters. That's why the social partners, the trade unions, and the employers organizations have asked in May 23 to the government, fiscal and parafiscal, stand still. They have asked the government not to change anything in the field of supplementary pensions, because at that time Former Minister of Pensions Karel PS wanted to very highly tax the supplementary pensions, as certainly the high supplementary pensions. That's why they asked not to do that, not to harness the trust of the people. The new federal government, has also written in their principles that they want to respect that standstill as asked by the social partners. But what we see is, like you say, we have an extra solidarity contribution on the capital above 150,000 euros. So in my eyes, this is not exactly what the social partners have asked. So you're right about that. This must be a warning on the government not to change the legislation on the supplementary pensions too often. But I can only see together with you that, yes, there is a new tax now. So you're right. I have no exact answer on your, but this is something that is very important. And we hear a lot of young people saying, "Will there be a pension later when I retire?" So in these matters, trust is very, very, very important.
Yeah, and I think what Stephen mentioned here is it's going to be the general reaction for most people who have accumulated large secondary pillar pension. They'll be like, wait a minute, this is not okay. And so we'll see. It's a normal reaction, and it does erode trust a little bit indeed. Yeah, it's a bit of it's part of the risk and in actually going into the pension system is that this might happen or worse, or and given the state of Belgian finances, it's not exactly the best budget in the EU, certainly. So
but this underlines perhaps the need for structural reforms in Belgium, I guess.
Which everybody knows is needed, but from a political perspective, it seems extremely difficult. And I think, you know what, in fact, every single conversation we've had this week, the conclusion was there's a need for for structural reforms of the pension system, and it's very hard to get moving. And so the previous speakers also were saying, well, this government seems to have some energy, but what's been announced so far, in fact, is not sufficient. I would just allow it to keep going a bit longer, essentially, but not solve the problem long term. Because the problem is really, it's a problem of massive scale, right? It's a reduction of the working force and an extension of the life expectancy, and so it's a double pressure. Plus, on average, people working less, in fact, and retiring earlier than the actual pension retirement. So there's a combination of factors which right now is not being addressed, and the money is being found in other parts of the budget, not from the social contributions. So at some point someone's gonna have to find a solution. But Karel, this was a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for your time, your generosity in terms of sharing your knowledge and giving us your time and to talk to us tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone in the audience for the questions and also for just being here and enjoying the events that we organize. Karel, do you have any final words of piece of wisdom you want to share with the audience before we close?
Oh, wisdom is a huge word. No, I guess it's important to have the two sides of the story. When you work as a self-employed, you pay contributions and you have social security. That's important, and that's the basic. On top of it, you can see what you can do, because when you're self-employed and you start a business, you need your money perhaps more for your business in the first year than for other things. So when it's possible, as soon as it's possible, I guess it's important for self-employed people to start thinking about retiring and how to get an income that is sufficient to have a decent life. And then you have to take action. And this can be in supplementary pension, but I've heard from the audience also, and that's legitimate. There are also other possibilities, but I get it's very important for self-employed who are very enthusiastic always about their business. They know their business, and sometimes these matters are a little bit far away for them. So I guess it's very important to have contact with their natural advisor, their accountant, their broker, perhaps the community you have, to talk with people and then to figure out what they can do in order to manage that sufficient income after retirement. I think that is the most important thing. That there is no one size fits all.
That's true. That's true, and it's true that in our community, people tend to learn and study about personal finance. So we have those options of Pillar 4, but the pension system is built in fact in a pretty efficient way for everyone else. So, I guess the final word I wanted to share with you, Karel, is like in our community and the people you have spoken to, in fact, most of them are already index investors, which means that their money is already working at this level up here. Most people, the benchmark is in fact the savings account, right? It's probably here. But in our case, the benchmark is we have a very well established, very efficient, optimized portfolio that's working right here. And so, if the pension system is somewhere here, there, for those who are at the benchmark of the savings plan, this is a no-brainer. You have to go for it, like the pension savings, right?
Yeah.
And like the VAPZ probably and the other products. But for people who was right here, this is why Dennis is asking the questions like, is it worth for me to go to these products if I'm already up here with the system I have? That's why this conversation happens. It's also why I'm asking the question about how much money do we get in terms of benefits at retirement compared to the net income I'm investing when I'm contributing to those, because in fact that's the question we ask within to know whether it's worth for us going into it or not. But as you can see, it's work in progress. But certainly today we go away with a much better understanding of the system, the options, the benefits, and the constraints. And so that is thanks to you. So again, Karel, thank you so much for everything. And we hope to see you in future FIRE Belgium events, and hopefully we meet in person as well.
Okay.